Welcome, everybody, and we are happy to be already for the fourth time this year to talk in the series PLM Green Global Alliance talks with PLM-related vendors about sustainability. Together with my PLM Green partner, Mike Reisig, we have the honor to talk today with Rochelle from Siemens, a well-known company in the PLM domain. So, first of all, welcome, Ryan, and can you introduce yourself personally and in your relation to sustainability? What is your connection with sustainability?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate being here. This is quite an opportunity, so I appreciate it. But as you mentioned, I'm Ryan Rochelle. I currently work in Siemens Digital Industries in their sustainability team. As personally, my interest in sustainability has been here for a long, long time. I had an interest from an early days when I was in high school and ended up doing sustainability-focused curriculum in college. Found my way into some sustainable technologies here at Siemens, and now I found my way over to Digital Industries, which of course has the software component, which is the PLM component, which is what we're here to talk about today. And what we can do and how we can utilize those programs and those technologies to help our customers find their journeys towards sustainability and help them with whatever stage on their journey towards sustainability that they're at.
Okay. I think, you also have the background already being active in the field with sustainability. If we zoom into Siemens, of course, Siemens is a huge company. Where do you discover sustainability in the organization? What are the main action points that you see at the moment?
Well, I think Siemens is in an interesting place because we're not only a provider of software, which can help folks with their sustainability journeys, but we're also a technology provider. We build and produce our own technology. And so we're using our own technology in our own factories. We're using our own know-how within our own products. And so we're really trying to bring sustainability about in every way that we can across the entire life cycle from, a software provider into the manufacturing world, but also as a supplier to many of these companies out there as well. We've been in business for a long, long time. Like you mentioned, we're a very large company. We have a bunch of different products that we do. And we just put out some marketing not too long ago that 90% of our products positively influence sustainability in the market. Each one of those in a different way and in a different form, but the basis there is that we are trying to utilize our technology to enhance sustainable benefits for our customers across the globe, whether that's CO2 reduction, whether that's water usage reduction, whether that's material types that we're using, or just gaining insights and transparency into your operations and understanding where you are today so you can baseline, and then ultimately we improve upon that.
And at which moment did you discover that sustainability became a topic? I think we were everyone was focusing on digitalization, and then the sustainability wave came. Do you have examples of that? Where did it happen or when did it happen?
Oddly enough, Mark and I had a chance to talk the other day, and one of the things that we talked about is, look, PLM is for efficiency. It's for improving, and that's sustainability at the same time, right? So I don't think there was a trigger moment. I don't think there was a click anywhere that said, okay, now we got to do sustainability, right? But it's utilizing the programs and the digital technologies that are available to you to improve your cost, quality, and time. But the other additional outcome that we're now seeing and people are asking for and we're extracting from our software is that sustainability piece, right? That's kind of the next outcome that comes with it. And again, PLM is all about innovation. It's all about optimizing, and sustainability is nothing more than optimizing, but it's optimizing specific KPIs and specific parameters, right? We're talking about energy, we're talking about CO2 emissions, we're talking about water usage, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really, I can't say there's a trigger moment. I can't say there's a time when things kind of shifted, but I would say, obviously regulations are helping push this in the European Union, and I think we're going to see some of that around the world very shortly as well. But I also think it's just doing the right thing for business, doing the right thing for society, and ultimately, if we're making our processes more efficient, there's likely some sort of cost gains that can be found there as well.
The reason I asked this question is that in 2020 with the PLM Global Green Alliance, we started with this initiative, and we said that PLM can be used for sustainability, but it can also be used for the opposite. So where is the market really going to shift on thinking only on quality, cost, efficiency? Where is sustainability becoming the fourth dimension, you could say?
I think it is becoming the fourth dimension. I think, companies are, we see it in terms of at least what we're telling the shareholders and what we're telling the board and kind of the strategies that are being put in place, that it is becoming increasingly important. But again, I don't think you have to differentiate between, what businesses have commonly been looking at, which is profitability and sustainability. I think there is some level of play where they kind of interoperate with one another. Obviously, there may be a little bit of capital that has to go in up front to try to get to that starting point for sustainability. But I truly believe that if we're improving our efficiency, right, you're consuming less electricity, you're consuming less water, you're consuming less of these goods that you're purchasing. Therefore, you should be able to find a level of profitability. Where that level actually, kind of finds the crossover, or where those graphs cross, if you will, I don't know. It'll be different for every customer and every instance, but ultimately, yeah, it's the next dimension, right? We've been doing time, quality, and cost ultimately for companies to remain profitable, but now sustainability is that additional piece driven by regulation, but also driven by seeing what's going on in the world and understanding that, hey, this is actually the right thing to do, and it benefits all of us. And if it can be profitable at the same time, what a win-win for everyone.
Right. Mark?
Siemens Industrial must have a lot of influence on the PLM software, right? So are you part of actually driving requirements into, say, improving the way that they can look at product carbon footprint, or
Yeah, I mean,
collaboration?
me specifically, a little bit, yeah, but I mean, Siemens as a whole, again, right, we are a producer of our own products and our own widgets, if you will. And so we're using our own technology and we're learning from our own technology. We're improving our technology both with customers and with using it, in our own factories and within our own facilities. So, I don't know if I'd say me specifically, I'm driving requirements into there, but the way that we work internally and also externally with our customers, listening to their feedback. And again, our customers are also internal, right? So we have our own factories, our own facilities that are utilizing our software. We're really leveraging that, right? This is our customer zero. We are trying to prove that if we can do it in our own facilities, we can do it for everyone else out there. And so we're learning both from customers and from internal. And yeah, of course, we have to innovate, right? We'd be kind of stagnant if we weren't innovating and improving the products as we go. But part of that is, Mark, understanding what's going on with the regulations and what's actually going to be required from a compliance standpoint, but then also operationally, how is this going to work and how is this truly working in the real world? So it's balancing both of those and making sure that we're bringing out the best products for our customers and for our own solutions internally.
Yeah. So I have another question. Ryan, we spent Wednesday at the SimData's industry forum. We heard a lot about digital twins and digital threads and visibility and collaboration. How do you see that impacting sustainability?
Yeah, to me, I think that's key, Mark, because when we talk about sustainability, we really are talking about the life cycle of that product or of that process or of that material, really. And I think a digital twin is a great representation of the data, right? It's a representation of a virtual representation of the product, whether that's a process, whether that's the entire life cycle. And I think in order to understand the life cycle, figure out where our emissions are, where additional water is being used, or things are outside of the parameters as they're designed, a digital twin is fantastic for. We talked about optimizing, we talk about analyzing. If you can analyze in a digital space, you're going to save yourself time, you're going to save yourself money. And I also think there's probably a sustainable benefit of not creating a prototype that you have to go test on and that kind of stuff. So to me, I think it's a hugely important topic. I think it's increasingly important if we want to look at sustainability because of the life cycle view that can be brought into a digital twin with all of those data sets tied into one virtual representation or virtual representations of the process or of the whole. So, point solutions will get us so far. If we look at one individual area of, let's say, production, we can reduce CO2 there, but what about the design of the product? What about the material going into the product? What about how that product's being used in its lifetime? And so I think that's where the power of a digital twin can really help us see the full life cycle, understand the full life cycle, and really use that virtual representation as a bit of a playground to understand what is happening and how can we analyze, optimize, and do this a bit more efficiently than we may have been doing it in the past.
If you're designing with the end of life in mind, ideally, you'd be recycling, reusing, refurbishing, designing products that would last longer, all that. I know the entire world's got a long ways to go there, but can you speak to what Siemens is doing in that respect?
Yeah, we're really kind of talking to our customers and also internally about designing for sustainability. So kind of shifting that sustainable requirement to the left, to the start, to day one, right? If we're going to design a product, let's have sustainability in mind, the materials that are being used, how this thing's going to be used during its life cycle, but also how we're manufacturing it, and also the supply chain, where these materials are coming from, how we're getting them. Is there a more efficient option? Is there a more optimized option to do this? As mentioned on the last one, it's the whole process that's going to get us to where we're trying to get to. And by, thinking sustainability first, thinking how is this going to be used? How is this going to be produced? How are we going to ship it and get it out to our consumers and our customers? If we can consider all of these things early on in the life cycle of that product, I think we'll have a much better chance of optimizing it throughout. And we're probably going to learn a little bit just because it's changing the thinking a little bit from what we have done in the past. What I've seen, at least coming up in my few years, is we're very much in a make, use, dispose sort of system here, right? And plastic water bottles are a perfect example of how terrible it is, right? We use it once and we just toss it to the side. Well, if we start thinking about how those products are going to be used and how they could be reused after their life, now we can start, getting some of those usable materials back instead of just dumping them into a landfill. And if we can start to understand the process of how these things are shipped around the world and how they're used around the world and how, where they're used and all these sorts of things, it's really going to help us with utilizing less materials, but still being able to achieve the same level of quality of life and those sorts of things that we're looking for. So I do think it's hugely important that when we're designing a product, we start. Maybe sustainability isn't number one when we start designing that product, but I think it has to be one of the key components early on.
I think, Ryan, you are in the unique position of being both the inspirator, the innovator as Siemens, and also being able to execute in your company. And I would say that's a nice fluent mindset. Now I'm curious about your customers. Are they pushing you to deliver more sustainable concepts, sustainable data-driven tools? Because the digital twin is beautiful, but you have to start somewhere. How do you see this happening?
I think it depends on the customer, right? I think that the best way to answer this is that everyone's at a different place in their digital transformation and their sustainable transformation. I would say the majority of what I'm hearing right now is, we want sustainability. We have a quick conversation. Hey, what are you guys looking for? What are we hoping to achieve? Sometimes the answer is everything, which is a bit of an interesting answer, right? Because that to me tells me we got to start somewhere. And where that somewhere is generally starting with your measurements. You have to, if we look at what these companies out there are saying to their shareholders and to their managing boards is we're going to reduce by X%. Well, in order to reduce, you have to start with a baseline, right? So to me, the first thing that we got to do is get in there and understand your baseline and understand where you are with energy consumption, CO2 emissions, water usage, whatever that key thing is for you. And I think that all starts with data, Jos, and being able to get that data from the machine level up to a place where we can analyze it, where we can see it, where we can view it, and we can understand what's going on.
Exactly. There you mentioned an important point. We have to measure the data. It's data driven. It's not the creating.
It's all data driven.
Yeah.
It's all data driven, and I think that's the exciting part about digital twins is that it's a way to manage that data, which there's going to be a lot of data when we start trying to do this to the degrees and the levels that the European Union and some of these other regulators are asking for at this point.
Talking about the European Union and the digital product passport, you are both US based. How nervous are you about the digital product passport, like some companies are in Europe?
I'm personally not too worried about it. Siemens has some cool stuff coming out right now, especially in the battery world, where we're Passport. I think it's actually commercially available now. I'm not sure, but the whole concept is to be able to understand the life cycle and the use of that battery so that at the end of its life and at the end of its use, we may be able to extract some usable materials back from it, and we may be able to reuse it in different applications. And so, product passports, I think, are becoming extremely important. Again, if we talk about the whole life cycle, part of that phase and understanding what's going on once it leaves my board where it was produced. And so having some visibility, understanding how it's going to be used, what the wear methods are, what what processes are happening, and where around the globe this thing ended up too, I think is hugely important if we want to try to re-extract some materials from it. So really important. It's becoming more important. I think where circularity and recycling is a part of these regulations. I think understanding the entire life cycle of a product from start to finish through a technology like a passport is going to be hugely, hugely important. And it's going to be able to help us with traceability and understanding where things are, where things go, where they're used. Even so much as in situations where products are finding their way into hands of folks that they shouldn't be there or weren't intended to be there. And, understanding those sorts of things can also help from a people centricity standpoint around the globe.
Right.
Siemens has an industry segment that they focus on, which is batteries. Like a lot of companies will have aerospace, aerospace and defense, automotive, etc., energy. They've got a specific focus on batteries, which, not to do a plug for Siemens, but that was, I thought, pretty forward thinking.
Yeah, Mark, I think we see the trends, right? We see the EV trends, we see the electrification trends that are happening out there. And, here in the US specifically, I think there's a lot of reshoring, a lot of activity bringing that kind of work back here, that manufacturing back here. And so, from a sustainability standpoint, I think it's a great play because electrification's happening. It's going to help us save some fossil fuels at the end of the day. But then also with that manufacturing and with the jobs that are being brought back here to the US, it's a great opportunity for any company. So I think Siemens put a little focus on there for those very reasons. And to your point, I think it's a good play. I think it makes sense.
Right, and with that, we touch also the circular economy and system thinking. How do you see your customers also transforming from, I would say, a linear process to a more circular ways of thinking? Is it common because it's complex?
It is complex, and I think the key thing there is that it's not necessarily just a shift in how you design or model something, but it's a shift in your business models as a whole, because there will be costs associated with it. At the end of the day, there may be an ecosystem that needs to be built up to handle these sorts of things. I think it's an interest of our customers, and again, I think it depends on where the customers are in their digital and their sustainable journey. Some customers kind of have things staring them right in the face that they need to take care of right now, I would say, just to meet regulations and meet the reporting requirements and those sorts of things. So circularity may be a little further down the line for them, but it's certainly not something that they're not thinking about. We are thinking about it. We're talking about it with them and trying to understand, what's the ecosystem look like? Where's the use cases? What's the business model look like? How can we develop this so that it's profitable, and it's doing the right things from a sustainability KPI standpoint. But you're right, it's a challenge, and data alone is not going to solve it. I think there's a lot of thought that's going to have to go in, a lot of smart people getting in the room, and it's not just engineers. I think it's also the finance folks to understand if, hey, this is actually a profitable thing that we can do, and it makes sense. At the end of the day, sustainability is great, but we're only going to do it so much as it's still profitable for the business, and so long as we can still stay in business, because ultimately we're in business to make money, not to make the planet greener.
Right. And to that point, I mean, do you see a difference between the big enterprises and the smaller companies? Smaller companies should be more flexible, but usually have also less time to have a strategic vision for 5 to 10 years because they rely on their flexibility. Do you
Yeah, and I think
you
get in an interesting situation there, because sometimes, and a lot of times, those smaller folks are suppliers to the bigger guys. And so the pressure may be coming on the bigger guys from a reporting standpoint or from a regulatory standpoint, and these smaller guys happen to be in the supply chain of those bigger guys, which that data then needs to shift its way up. So I think we're at an inflection point. I think it's close. It's almost time now where folks are going to have to start looking into this, no matter what size company you are. Yes, the smaller ones are likely a little more agile. Maybe we can spin up the data measurements and find some optimization techniques a bit quicker. But again, this is an ecosystem. This is a life cycle thing, right? So suppliers and providers and transportation and logistics and all of that is considered in this. So I think eventually it's not going to matter what size of a company you are. It's going to affect you. It's going to touch you one way or the other, whether you have to report due to your size and where you do business, or you just happen to be a supplier to one of the bigger guys, and therefore, they're going to put pressure on you to at least report the numbers so that they can have a full view of whatever they're doing. So yeah, it's, this, unfortunately, sustainability isn't something that just affects the big guys. It's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect all of us. And ultimately, we all kind of have to be in this together to some degree. And if you really take an ecosystem view and an ecosystem approach to this, then it doesn't matter if you're, thousands of employees or just 50 employees. At the end of the day, we're trying to do the same thing, and we're trying to work together to make it happen.
Maybe related to this ecosystem approach, and it's more on the big ones, we briefly discussed the Catena X, and I understood also Siemens is involved in Catena X. Can you tell something about the vision and what is happening from your side related to Catena X? Is it landing? Is it pure automotive?
Well, I think it's landing. I think yes, it is automotive focused right now, but I think it really shows that an industry can come together and try to make this move forward together, right? So instead of being, hey, we're competitors, it's a situation where, hey, let's get the suppliers in the room, let's get the OEMs in the room, let's figure out what the right ways to do this are, what are the right measurements, what is the right methodology, because right now I think there's a lot of, hey, we're doing this, we're trying to measure it this way, we're trying to measure it that way, we're trying to use this estimate, we're trying to use that estimate. And so finding a level of consistency across an ecosystem, even if that ecosystem is an industry, I think is hugely important. I'm hoping Catena X will be kind of the springboard to get some other industries to start speaking and start working together in the same way, so that we can get some consistency and get some understanding. And sustainability isn't a one person thing. It's not a me thing. It's not a Siemens thing. It's an all of us thing. And so the more we can get together and get those players at the table to talk about the true problems and also hopefully find some true solutions and some consistency in what we're doing, I think is going to be great. And, Siemens has been a huge part of that since, more or less the start. And, we'll continue to stay involved and keep driving as much as we can.
Yeah, coming back to the beauty of Catena X, it reminds me of the early days of automotive and aerospace, where those industries said you have to run on this system or on this infrastructure. Even this version of the CAD tool was mandatory in the supply chain. And then we were very much file-based. I would call it the coordinated approach. Now we are seeing something similar happen, but then data-driven, connected, and you share what you have to share instead of being 100% connected. So it's
absolutely
really an interesting trend.
And Jos, we have access to the data today, so why wouldn't we use it and why wouldn't we share it, right? And I think that's the beauty of some of these PLM solutions and some of these PLM tools and the concept of PLM in general. Utilizing PLM for sustainability, I think, it's fantastic.
So one of the things that is popping up, and it's popping up very fast, is also the impact of AI on sustainability, on assessments, etc. Is that a trend that you're working on also for the future?
Of course, we're looking into AI. It's one of those disruptive technologies, and it's one of those technologies that we have to look at. I think we'd be blind not to. I think how and where AI is going to impact sustainability, don't necessarily know yet. I haven't necessarily seen where it's being used or how it's being used to enhance sustainability. But to your point, if it can help us analyze, if it can help us understand, and if it can help us bring together data points and data sets, then absolutely as valuable as possible. But it is one of those technologies, I think, machine learning to understand, hey, this is how the process was designed to run, and this is how it's actually run if we have all those data sets. And to have AI do those comparisons and quickly flag, hey, we got something off over here. This is how the digital representation is saying it should run, and this is what we're getting from the real feed sensor data. I think some things like that are going to be fantastic for us, right? And how it's going to be, I think we're at that point with AI right now where it's still fairly new. We're still teaching it. It's still learning. And so I think the opportunities for AI, and especially for sustainable improvement and benefit, are going to be huge.
Well, thanks for this honest answer, because now this year you have to ask something about AI. I mean,
You
2 years
have to.
ago when we started, we didn't talk so much about AI, but if you don't consider it yet in the conversation, then you.
And again, Joseph, it's one of those technologies that we're still learning how it's going to be utilized and how we can best harness it, I would say. And so it will be here, and I think there is opportunity for it. You know, I'm by no means an AI expert, but just the little bit of limited knowledge that I have, I can see some serious benefits in, you know, understanding data, pulling data together, thinking about what that data looks like, you know, analyzing data quicker than you or I might be able to do it in a spreadsheet, and you know, what those other opportunities are with AI in the future is going to be quite exciting.
So we're already talking a little bit about the future. Is there anything exciting or new things coming up from Siemens that you say that's important to mention and to
I think,
study?
well, from Siemens' point of view, we're going to continue driving our strategy, which is to combine the real and digital worlds. Again, we're a manufacturer of manufacturing products, and we're also you know, a software provider in the PLM space. And so really combining that real and digital world, combining the OT, IT, you know, having as much data as we can possibly pull together so that we have as much insights and we can optimize as much as possible to improve efficiency across the board. That's what we're trying to do. We've been doing it for a long, long, long time, and we're going to continue doing it. And you know, I think sustainability is just, again, another outcome or another lever of a digital transformation or digital enterprise journey. And so you know, we're continuing down that path.
Yeah, I fully agree. The real sustainability implementations or efforts can only be done by a digital data-driven backbone. And
it'd be hard to do on Excel, man. It'd be really hard to do on Excel, right? And so I think let's utilize the technology that's out there. I think it's user friendly, it's helpful, it's valuable, and the more we can pull together, the more insights we're going to have, and ultimately the more optimization we can do.
Okay. Mark, any question from you? A last question. We are reaching the half hour.
Brian, I'm just curious about, I mean, probably the biggest problem facing companies is scope 3 emissions in upstream and downstream value chains. What is Siemens working on, or how are they going to help, and how is Siemens? I'm assuming that is one of the harder problems to solve for Siemens. Is that correct? And
yeah, Siemens is in an interesting position there, Mark, because we have suppliers and we're also a supplier. So when we talk about, you know, scope 3 emissions, you know, it can kind of be faceted both ways for us. But as far as, you know, suppliers is how I would look at it. We've got a product out there called Green. It's actually a free product. But if you go have some conversations with your suppliers and start bringing their data into that system, it's essentially a data aggregation system that will help you understand your scope 3 emissions and pull them into, you know, a single source of truth, if you will. So from that standpoint, I truly think the biggest thing you got to do as with your supply chain is go have a conversation with them, let them know what you're trying to do from a sustainability standpoint and what that data requirements are going to be. Somehow we're going to have to figure out a data transition from you guys to us and vice versa, and all that kind of stuff. And so that's where some of our products like Green come into play, where we can pull all that data into a single source of truth, and looking across that supply chain. Now, in a lot of cases, Mark, you know, smaller companies that are supplying, or, you know, suppliers in different regions in the world aren't as prepared for the sustainability data as we might wish they were. And so I think that's going to take a little bit of time working with your ecosystem so that they understand your requirements, you understand their requirements, and then ultimately the data is in the right place, it's in the right format so that we can utilize it and we can, you know, report on our scope 3 emissions or improve our scope 3 emissions, whatever we're trying to do with that data.
You see this impacting how engineering and sourcing have traditionally worked together?
Oh, absolutely.
Together.
Absolutely. You know, again, if we shift our thinking left here and we start thinking about this in the design phase, it should impact our sourcing, right? Because sustainability should be a part of that sourcing. So where are we getting that material from? Where is it being mined? How is it being processed before it gets to us. You know, are we buying something from the other side of the world when there's an option that's sitting right next to our back door? Those sorts of things need to be considered. And again, I think data can help us analyze those things a lot quicker and more accurately than, you know, just us sitting and looking at an Excel sheet or Google Maps.
And this brings me to maybe the final point. Do we have the right skills in the field to make this transition? Because as we start, many people are grew up in the old way of thinking, document driven. Now it's data, it's connected. Do you see there is a shortage of skills, or is it something we need to motivate people to think different, to learn, and where can they learn?
I think we definitely need to motivate folks to think a little differently. You know, Jose, I don't think there's a whole lot of college curriculums out there right now that are focused on sustainable manufacturing or the, you know, sustainable concepts within manufacturing. We as Siemens are working on some curriculum with some universities that's going to be rolling out in the next little while, and will be available to the public. So that could be pretty cool. But I think a lot of it, to your point, is educating, right? There's a lot of folks that don't necessarily understand the whole sustainability concepts and kind of what that truly means and how we can drive these things down. So, you know, we're internally trying to educate our workforce just as much as we're trying to get education out there into the marketplace and into academia. Because if we really want to make this happen, we're going to have folks that think along these lines and are driven to kind of drive these sorts of actions and outcomes. And again, teaching the digital tools that can help them get there is going to be super impactful, and it's going to keep us in line with technology and kind of where the world's going. But yeah, I think there is a bit of a shortage right now, whether that's because this is a newish topic or a increased focus on the topic, perhaps. We'll get there, I think, I hope, but
yeah, it shows the different angles you can take. It starts from digitalization, it starts from regulations, but in order to be efficient and to do it, you need virtual twins or digital twins, and you need educated people that can deal with that.
Yeah, and to me, Jose, at this point in time, I think sustainability is a bit of a buzzword, right? It's something that it's a very high level concept that we're trying to accomplish. Within sustainability, I think what most people think is CO2 reductions, right? But there's also how people are living, how people are educated, what we can do in that respect. There's also how much water we're utilizing and getting in and out of the water systems and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think an education is good. I hope we can get some more education out there. And I think, you know, I work a little bit with academia, and I know that academics are definitely thinking about sustainability, moving some of their curriculum towards sustainable manufacturing, sustainable supply chain, and a lot of that curriculum, at least the ones that we're working on, is very data driven and very much based in a PLM or a software space.
Great. I think with that, thanks for your insights. I think from people, processes, and tools, we are now into people, data, processes, and infrastructures.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. This was great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right.
Cool. Thanks, guys.